There are 15 bills floating around here to strip your authority, to make sure that you have nothing to do with curriculum and nothing to do with selecting textbooks. You've created a hornet's nest like I've never seen here. Now, the perception out there is that you as chair have done everything conceivably possible to make sure that intelligent design is what is taught in the state's textbooks. How would you respond to that?
The question is, did I try to put intelligent design in the books? I'd say that'd be false. Absolutely.
That you've done everything possible as chairman to push that point of view.
No, sir.
What would you say? How would you respond to that?
I would say it's not true. I would say I did everything I did to bring up the some of the scientific difficulties of evolution. I would say that would be absolutely true. Yes, sir.
The church has influence that reaches communities in big ways. Through followers of religion, the church can influence politics by their sheer numbers. According to the Pew Religious Landscape Study, 70.6% of the population of the United States identify themselves as some form of Christian, be it Catholic or Evangelical. If a vast majority of adults in the country are Christian, then the politicians, by virtue of self-interest and survival, are at the behest of these groups. Should a particularly powerful and large group of people want creationism taught in some way in textbooks, all they need to do is put people in positions of power to undermine science and history by censoring words. A fascinating look at this phenomenon is documented in the PBS documentary The Revisionaries, which follows the career of two evangelical politicians working on the Board of Education. One Donald Mcleroy and Cynthia Dunbar.
We are all here tonight for the same reason. We want our country back.
Both are seen at education board meetings, opening the session in prayer in a state building, conducting state business. It would seem at just a cursory glance that the separation of church and state principle is being flouted here. In this clip of the Revisionaries, a vote is being held as to whether or not schools should be teaching the separation of church and state from the viewpoint of whether or not government is allowed to promote one religion over another.
This debate is too broad, and one of the things that we keep being hounded by the other side is that the conservatives are trying to inject religion into the TEKS. No, we're not. But nor do we want our religious history to be tainted and drawn from a viewpoint that is not historically accurate. So I cannot support this motion.
The line, "Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof," seems concise. Government shall pass no law respecting the establishment of religion, which the teachers take to mean that the government can neither promote nor discourage any religious expression. The board members vote and they strike down the amendment, stating that it was not the intention of the First Amendment to restrict the government from expressing their own religious beliefs, which seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding of the language in the bill on both sides of the argument.
I'm one who agrees with John Stuart Mill. The best solution for bad ideas, for bad speech, is more speech and better ideas.
What Cornell University believes is the reason a religion cannot be promoted by the government is because in economic terms, a religion does not pay taxes, and is therefore not represented like a citizen of the USA. Therefore, religion has no voice in politics. The issue at debate here is on the language that will be taught in the school. Law scholars also take umbrage with the conflicting ideas that if Congress can pass no law restricting the establishment of religion, does that mean that actions considered illegal are no longer illegal because it was done on behalf of religious belief? Quoting from the Cornell Institute's examination of the First Amendment, we read, "If there is a constitutional requirement for accommodation of religious conduct, it will most likely be found in the Free Exercise Clause. Some say, though, that this is in a violation of the Establishment Clause for the government to give any special benefit or recognition of religion. In that case, we have a First Amendment in conflict with itself. The Establishment Clause forbidding what the Free Exercise Clause requires. So if this is to be believed, the government is not even supposed to recognize religion as a factor when making policy or law. To include something like creationism into textbooks would be a clear violation of the First Amendment. The problem used to be that the original text of the First Amendment only applied to Congress, and local and state governments were able to easily skirt the law. But in 1940, in Cantwell v. Connecticut, the Supreme Court found that through the 14th Amendment, that the Free Exercise Clause was applicable to state governments. This is known as the incorporation doctrine, and its power to limit the promotion or defamation of religion at the state level comes from the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, stating that no one shall be denied the pursuit of life or liberty without due process. What all this boils down to is that what these local government officials are doing is in direct violation of the law. that even opening a session with prayer can be seen as the promotion of a religion over others by government employees. This very same Texas Education Board held a vote to strike Thomas Jefferson from textbooks based on his understanding of the Enlightenment and how it is viewed today in the eyes of secular humanists. Again, from the film The Revisionaries, Cynthia Dunbar attempts to explain why she was against including Thomas Jefferson in the discussion of political enlightenment.
My intent was in no way to strike at Jefferson, to minimize his impact. I love Jefferson, I'm a huge fan. The problem is that Enlightenment current day is understood from the viewpoint of the secular humanistic ideology. If you want to see how those philosophers played out, look at the distinction between the French Revolution and the American Revolution. One was a secular humanistic, Voltaire, anti-Judeo-Christian beliefs. The other was what Jefferson put forward in the Declaration of Independence, the laws of nature and nature's God.
Jefferson rarely spoke on his personal religious beliefs, but in a recommendation to Peter Carr in 1787, Jefferson said, "Question with boldness even the existence of a God, because, if there be one, he must more approve the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear." In the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, which was written by both Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, we find written that Almighty God hath created the mind free, and manifested his supreme will, that free it shall remain, by making it altogether insusceptible of restraint. That all attempts to influence it by temporal punishments or burthens, or by civil incapacitations, tend only to beget habits of hypocrisy and meanness, and are a departure from the plan of the holy author of our own religion, who being both Lord both of body and mind, yet chose not to propagate it by coercions on either, as was in his almighty power to do, but to extend it by its influence on reason alone. It would seem that Jefferson detested the idea that religion should be spread through influence, coercion, or under the threat of violence by the government, or even that the use of public money. He seemed to see this act as tyrannical. From the very same words from the very same bill, they go on to state that to compel a man to furnish contributions of money for the propagation of opinions which he disbelieves or abhors is sinful and tyrannical. Jefferson believed that it was tyranny for the government to be in the business of spreading religion and forcing the taxpayer to fund that spreading of beliefs which do not correlate to their own. If we are to believe that the Board of Education in Texas were trying to stack the deck in favor of religion, they would naturally want to keep Jefferson, one of our founding fathers, out of textbooks for that very reason, so that no dissenting viewpoint on religion could be taught. It even goes so far as to vote on striking the words constitutional republic and insert democratic society. Both amendments thankfully failed, but striking Thomas Jefferson from the textbooks failed by only one vote.
Dr. McLeroy?
On 23B, I would like to delete hip-hop and insert country music.
Is there a second? Okay, discussion about the merits of removing hip-hop and replacing it with country and western music. Mr. Allen.
I just would like to know why we would drop hip-hop.
It's a music genre that doesn't need to be in our text.
I guess I would be wanting to know, what do you actually think hip-hop is before you delete it? You may be deleting something you know nothing about.
It is scary that it can be this easy to change the very ideas that founded this country and revise history this easily. The fundamental problem with government and education is that politics should play no part in deciding what people learn. Politics introduces inherent bias into a system of learning which threatens to carry that bias into the minds of a new generation, to the exclusion of any conflicting ideologies that may threaten the very power structure which created this system of education in the first place. It is the very definition of a conflict of interest. So why is this a problem? Well, the main issue is that religion is at conflict with science, a field that is based on observation and the burden of proof. Religion is a construct made up of faith, something almost impossible to quantify, and just as difficult to prove or disprove since it does not exist in the external, but merely in the realm of the supernatural and the realm of the mind. The question is, as always, what is the role of education in society? If it is to teach students what we know of observable reality, then religion cannot be a part of what is taught aside from, perhaps, in the context of history and social sciences. In the realm of the scientific, it should be up to the religious institutions to teach their parishioners, not for the taxpayer to fund their religious beliefs. I am in no way disparaging the spread of creationist ideas. But it has its place, and that place, according to the Founding Fathers themselves, is not the schoolhouse. And if these board members have it their way, your children will never know truly the principles for which this country was founded on when it comes to the establishment of religion or even the conflicting ideologies of opposing political parties.
I would like to add, describe the causes and key organizations and individuals of the conservative resurgence of the 1980s and 1990s, including Phyllis Schlafly, the Contract with America, the Heritage Foundation, the Moral Majority, and the National Rifle Association.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of Dr. McElroy's amendment? 7. All those opposed? 1 hand.
This very same board held a vote to strike communism from textbooks in favor of spreading free market ideas. The reason being that the free market is the very system which our economy currently operates in. But this argument misses the point of education. It is to show the student as much of the political landscape as possible and prepare them for what they will be learning in college. If we are handicapping them out of the gate, then when they get to college, they will already be behind. According to the Telegraph, opponents of an amendment to the school board standard had shut down a proposal to include Mexican American studies into a state where, as of 2010, census data showed made up 37% of Texas's total population of 27 million. According to enrollment data from the Texas Board of Education, Hispanic students make up the largest population of students in public schools at 59.9%. The question becomes, why would a school whose population is mostly one group deny teaching that group's history in schools, especially since Hispanic American history is also American history? According to the Telegraph article entitled "Texas Board Rejects Mexican American Studies Course," opponents of the bill dismissed the idea as reverse racism, arguing that it would inject leftist ideologies into the classroom. According to the Pew Research poll of the political ideologies in Texas, 64% of registered voters are conservative, which is also reflective of the School Board of Texas. Of the 15 members of the school board, 10 are Republican. By voting down, the board members also created new standards, which meant that across the state, textbooks would need to be rewritten because Fort Worth schools, for example, have had a Mexican American Studies course in its curriculum for over a decade. And if the new standards excluded these studies, the books would have to be rewritten. It is historical revisionism by bureaucracy. But even worse than the obvious political motivations are the implications of indoctrinating students into a political ideology by the preclusion of information. This also starts those children off on the wrong foot from an education standpoint and puts them behind the curve. In the documentary Race to Nowhere, college admissions state that most students with high GPAs are still forced to take remedial studies in basic high school courses. Fresh out of high school, these students' understanding of subjects is so far behind college entry level that they must relearn what they have been taught, which some say is a direct result of the standardized tests brought about by the No Child Left Behind Act.